Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Alchemy of Love podcast, where we are going to be diving into inner healing for healthy relationships. We're going to be talking about transforming the way that we connect, healing old wounds, understanding attachment styles, untangling codependent behavior that we may have developed as a result of childhood experiences, trauma bonds, toxic dynamics, masculine, feminine energy, healing from an imbalanced way of using feminine or masculine energy. We go deeper into metaphysics, soul contracts, psychic energy in your relationships, conscious communication. So let's begin with today's episode.
So we're here with our third episode of Alchemy of Love Season 2. And it happens to be the anniversary of the first time we ever met in person on this date, which is October 12th. And so we decided to do the third episode because that's why. And we now have a 360-degree view of ourselves because we've gone in a full circle. And so we've gathered all the different perspectives and we've gone 360 degrees and we're back here. And the theme that this episode is that was actually one of the first themes that came up when we thought about doing this podcast, which is your body is my temple. And we know that our body is our temple. My body is my temple. But what about when the other person's body is your temple? And not just a sex temple, because bodies are sex temples, but they have to be seen as temples in all of the other aspects that they are, in order for that sexual temple to be pristine and to be glowing and radiant. And for me, I've talked about my personal childhood and the trauma I experienced, and a lot of it was around sex. And so that's been a really big wound that I've been working through in my life. And after this first year, I feel like a completely different person on all fronts. Not different person, but just more of myself. And yeah. How does that make you feel?
Today I decided to just go with the flow of the episode. But I think a lot of people think that they're treating their bodies as a temple, or that they are viewing the other person's body as a sacred temple, when in reality they're trying to steal from the temple. Mm-hmm. They're trying to get as much from the temple that they can take for themselves, and they're trying to do it in a way that goes unnoticed. And if you're now wondering, what are you saying? I have no idea what you mean. Imagine that there's like a little man that walks into this temple. He's nice to everyone in the temple, always nice, saying the right words, the things that you want to hear. So they're not paying much attention. They're like, oh yeah, this is a nice guy, he can visit the temple. But then he steals and he starts taking all his gold and all these things, and he takes it with him. So each time the temple is gonna feel that there's something that's been taken from them. And a lot of times in relationships, there is an imbalance and not an equal give and take when it comes to the body and treating the other person's body in a way that is respectful, in a sacred way.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that that just means physical. It's like, oh, the physical aspects of the body is what I treat as sacred. And they think about healthy food and exercise and all the biohacking technology and doing meditation for the physical body and things like that, but they still hold a relationship with their own body that is based in obligation and expectation rather than true unconditional love, which is unconditional acceptance first. And so while they are attempting to honor the other as their temple, as a temple, they still have the person coming in to take gold and in their energetic field. It's like they have all this baggage and this weight and this trauma, and rather than giving themselves the opportunity to really form, like morph their identity into their true self, they're holding these expectations of control and they aren't willing to let those go. And so then it becomes controlling some aspect of the other person's experience.
Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to, always with everything, not fully trusting God.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot trust the other or yourself, or you cannot trust the other with your body, or you think you do, or you kind of dissociate, what a lot of people don't realize is that they just switch off mentally to not be in their body, or when they are with their partner, they switch off so that they don't have to feel the emotions that come up from being in their own bodies with the other person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where, like, I think I'm saying people will identify with their emotions rather than allowing their body to process it and identifying as their source frequency, because they don't trust that. And like an example of this is one of the big things that's helped me in the last year is the process of saying no when I'm feeling triggered around sex. And before, I was very obligated to just disregard the things I was feeling in my body and to power through it. And to just, it's like, well, this is what I have to do, because I was so used to it early on in my life as a child of being forced into sexual situations that I developed a validation off of me providing myself as this person, this thing for this experience. And it is also interesting for me because I'm going through the whole memory, the repressed memories coming up and finding new memories and things like that. And so, well, there's a lot of some people who kind of look at what I'm going through and they're like, well, how do you even know it's real? You could be making this up. On the other end, I'm experiencing this kind of level of PTSD when we're hanging out, and where I will freeze up and I won't know what to do. And then now I've been able to speak that into what's happening rather than just being quiet. And there were a few times where I couldn't speak it, I think, at the beginning. And because I wasn't saying it in that moment, then the communication with you got all off and you were like, what is happening here, you know? Mm-hmm. And then I got up the courage to speak it in the moment, because we would talk about it after, and you were like, you just got to say it in the moment. Like, that's what you have to say it in the moment, because you are treating my body as a temple by recognizing that if my body is having a traumatic reaction like that, then you very clearly don't want me to push through it because you're in some mood. Like, if that's not how it works at all. And so once I was able to say it in the moment, that's where I really started feeling this PTSD come up. And I would say something and then I would just end up crying for like 20 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, and it would just pour out of me. And it was this feeling of being recognized outside of just the state of desire, of that sexual desire. And that's just one small aspect of it, though.
Yeah, and I always say these things in metaphors. That's why that came up earlier with everything that I talk about. I always spontaneously see a metaphor from God that's like, here, make it easy for people to understand. It's like, because you are this temple and you had no bodyguards, you had no, it was like this magnificent shimmering temple, but then it basically got broken into. It was like a fancy brand new temple. Let's say you're a child, you are completely, like, you are this magnificent golden temple. And then there were these people that just broke down the doors. They killed the bodyguards and they kept going in and out of the temple. And you were just like, okay, I cannot do anything because there's no doors to this temple. This is just the way it is. And then, because the doors were not there, then mentally, the ideas, of course, you processed a lot of it and you were like, okay, I need to really not force myself. But then, of course, the other person needs to also help rebuild the temple, fix the temple. And if they keep going in and out of the doors because there's no doors, then they're gonna think, oh yeah, I can just walk in here whenever because there's no doors anyway. Nobody's saying anything, I can just go in here. And then that's not gonna be helpful at all. So, because the body holds the last, deepest layer of trauma, because all trauma healing first starts in the brain, recognizing patterns, overriding old programs, but then there's going to be deeper layers of that program that are going to be coming up in a delayed reaction almost. So they're going to come up later. So you may have already fixed all the programming and have whole new ideas about yourself, see things for what they were. And then 2 years later, suddenly your body has a whole new layer that comes up and you're like, oh my God, I thought I healed all this. What is this? It's because your body is now only releasing all of this because it's now feeling safe. So I basically recognized, okay, there's all this stuff that is now ready to come up. Because if all this stuff, it's like cleaning out all the crap that was still on the floor because there's no doors. So trash just comes flying in there and all the stuff. And then what you do is we sweep the floors and we put the doors on. So it's basically closing the doors so that the temple can maintain its purity. And so that there is time for this temple to actually really, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And that's like, that is how I feel now, is that there's doors on it. And it's like that.
And I'll knock the door. Hello.
Yeah. Hello. And it's like, I just feel completely different in terms of like the pressure that and expectation that I have on myself around all of those things and around being in that experience. And it's just like, because I have been allowed to feel safe and to say no and to express like things without being, without receiving your emotion of disappointment, really. Because I think that's the deep loop that I had as a child, having to have sexual experiences with this woman who is my handler, who I think is my mom. It's like I created that exact thing, was like there would be disappointment and fake disappointment, and so I turned this idea that like I wasn't able to provide love unless I was just listening to somebody else's desire. And so that that safe space has been everything.
And also because I, of course, didn't go through the same stuff that you went through, but in the last long-term relationship that I was in, I went through a whole phase like that where me and the partner that I was with back then were basically not really intimate for like the last year of the whole relationship, because there was all kinds of other stuff happening, but he was not communicating at all. So I went through this thing where I thought it was my fault. There was no communication happening. Anyway, but it was completely not my fault. It had everything to do with like stuff he was not looking at, and potentially also issues with him probably being gay, is what I now realize that there. And I dove into all of that, and it just all lined up that so many gay men don't realize they're gay, and just the way that he behaved and all the things. But I needed to go through that whole thing to then detach from that whole experience and realize that none of that had anything to do with me. And basically that came up in this situation with us, but very quickly I was able to snap out of it and say, oh, this is not at all the same thing, because there were so many areas in our relationship where I was completely being in connection with you, where I was in connection with you. And with him, it was also completely different. There was no connection on any level. There was no emotional connection. There was no communication. There was no... there was literally no evidence that I was loved. It was basically not there, none of it. I was paying for everything on my own. This is stuff I talked about in another podcast, but basically I was not at all experiencing that with Ryan, because I was seeing so much connection on all the other levels. And it was also not a chronic issue. It was not something that kept happening and kept happening. I think maybe in a whole year this happened a handful of times. that you had these moments where you felt frozen. And then we just talked about it, because to me the relationship was not hanging on by a thread. Not everything depended on whether we were sexually intimate, yes or no. The relationship was the whole foundation for everything else, and that was just one aspect of it. So
yeah, and it's like our loops had to come together from our personal lives before that. And like you said, like that you did feel like that in the beginning when it happened a couple times and I didn't communicate, and that caused your stuff to come up of thinking, oh, is it happening again? Is he, you know, like, but then we would always talk about it, and it's like closing the gap. It's like it would take like 24 hours for it to come up and be like, oh yeah, that was, you know, and then it eventually it was like it was happening in the moment. And it was just like that aspect though of like recognizing that the body is the thing expressing that, and like the body being the temple too, is like I also can't just, because in my last long-term relationship I went through the repressed memories coming up, and I stopped wanting to have sex a lot, and she took it as like a problem, and so then I kind of closed more off. And then I got divorced, and I didn't have any desire to connect on that level. And so I've just moved into places where like it was more not convenient, but I just wasn't in that space with myself. And so I think it's easy for me to go into that space. I mean, it's not now because it's more of just like a natural flow, but like the default mode before when we first got together was like it not happening, and like it happens. I don't know how to describe it. Like it was like the default was not being in the mood for me, And then there were very specific circumstances and feelings that I would have to have in order to think I was in the mood for that. But it was like this whole disassociation process of just using what I had experienced before. And so it's just become this level of like knowing that you as your true self recognize my body as a temple, but that you're also your body, which is your true self, but that your body is in this like constant telepathic communication with my body, and that when I need to purge something or feel something or clear something, your body's gonna know and you are gonna know to do that. And so it's almost like we've allowed room for that trigger to be there, knowing it's a healthy thing when we're able to talk about it, rather than thinking that the whole aspect of sexual perfection, I guess, which I think a lot of people hold on to, like you were saying.
Yeah,
like a thread.
I had something I was gonna say. What was it again? I don't know.
Your body triggering, you triggering, knowing when we need to work through something.
Yeah, that basically it's easy. Yeah, that's what it was. When you're on your own, it's easy to not have to go through being triggered in that way. And it is necessary sometimes to have periods of time where you are celibate, where you are just with yourself, and you allow for stuff to just digest on an energetic level, where you can just let the stuff kind of integrate and you can just let it heal. Because it's also not healthy to force yourself into physical relationships with people to try to make yourself get over it, because you're only going to make things worse. Because it's important that if you have sexual trauma and you are with someone, that you feel completely safe with them to let these triggers come up. Like in the way that we have been letting the stuff come up. And if I would get triggered by him getting triggered, because it's a whole PTSD festival, it's like, oh yeah, your triggers are now triggering my triggers, and we're both going through like a PTSD phase. I need to be alone, he needs to talk, so now we both have different ways that we need to deal with this, and we have to then not get triggered by the other person being triggered by how we get triggered. So it becomes complicated. And the thing is, you have to basically always go back to the love that is there. And when you can connect back into the original love that is there, then you're going to be able to put all of your emotions that are coming up from your body in perspective, and you're not going to identify with all of this stuff that you're feeling, because you're going to recognize that you're feeling the things and you have to go through the feelings. And at the same time, you're not going to blame the other person for it, and you can talk. It's by detaching from the emotion as your identity that you're going to be able to talk. Yes.
And when you do that, then you're not going to attach an identity on the other person's emotions. And so it just allows it to come up and to process.
Or making assumptions based on your own trauma. Like in my case, that if I would not have been able to put things in perspective, I could have easily slipped into, oh my God, you think I'm ugly, you don't want to have anything, you're not attracted to me, and it's my fault, which is only going to put more pressure on you. And that's the last thing you need when you're already feeling like there's a bunch of pressure on you.
And that's you breaking the loop for me too, because if I don't feel that coming from you, then I'm not going to go more into a trigger of trying to fix that and to solve it.
And I think it's the expectations of the whole thing that when, and not necessarily women, but a person just in general, has all kinds of expectations around the physical body of the other person. It's again with the temple. You're gonna go in this temple. They do their ceremonies the way they do them, but you have this whole idea in mind of what that needs to look like for you to connect to God in the temple. You have your whole idea. And you walk into this temple with your whole idea and your entire scenario of we're gonna do it this way, and then you end up in the temple and the temple does things completely differently, and you feel that you're not in control, and that means that you cannot guarantee the outcome of it, or what you're then trying to do is control the situation. And then it's no longer a dance. It is no longer an experience of connecting with God in the temple. And temples are made for connection to God, to the divine. So that's what it is. And everyone has heard this. You have to be in the now. You cannot be constantly in the future or in the past, because then you are dissociating. You're not in the now. And that's basically what it comes down to when you are in the temple together, because then there's a third temple, which is the temple of union, where your two bodies become one temple. And it is then that you have to be able to fully be present with the other person and not be thinking about what outcome you want for this whole experience. And that's the problem. Like, I guess if I want to say it in just a normal way, like a lot of people, they're like, oh no, if there was no orgasm, it was not good sex. And it's like, why was it not good? What makes it good? What makes it not good? Like, it's about, in every second of the experience, experiencing God through the body of the other person, which is where the temple part comes in. And so when you're like, oh yeah, this was not good, it's because you were constantly projecting into the future of what you wanted, so you weren't even experiencing the connection in the moment.
Yeah. And that's bound to be limited if they are not finding that presence of God in every other aspect of the person. And so they're then going to take those cracks into that experience. And I think that's what it comes down to, is just the presence of exactly what's happening and how it's happening.
And you hear, when you hear people talk about Tantra, they're always saying it's life. Everything in life is a sensual experience. If you view life as a whole temple, the modern mystery school temple, then you can have a very sensual experience, and people, they sometimes go, oh, what are you talking about? It's like, it's not sexual like in this lust type of thing. It is about connecting through your body with God. You can do this by cooking, dancing, eating. All of these things, like having a meal together, can be more connecting for some couples than for another couple that's having sex and they're dissociating. It's a more sensual experience to enjoy a meal together, and there's no lust involved, because people get all these words mixed up. It's about truly enjoying with the senses of your body and finding God in all of those experiences. Yeah.
That's a perfect ending, I think.
Yep, so yeah, what else is there to say? This was an episode about physical connection, and we could even go so much deeper into this, because a lot of behaviors and it like spirals out of control. If you let this get out of hand, then the whole relationship basically can become very sour. And in that aspect, like, the body is the temple, and the foundation for I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of relationship problems are going to be translated in how you are intimate together, or lack of intimacy, because people will then say, oh, the sex is bad, blah, blah, blah. But the root of the actual problem is not there. The root of the problem is going to be in communication, in all kinds of other aspects. Yeah. So listen to the other episodes, I would say. Send in your questions, because of course this is also connected to attachment styles. You're going to see how that translates also in a physical way. How you will have people that will be very avoidant. They're going to be the same way when it comes to physical intimacy. Or with people that have a very anxious attachment style, they're gonna basically throw themselves physically at people and just ignore all the red flags. Like, not red flags, but like the body language of the other person. They're just not even gonna be paying attention to it because they're so busy with their own anxiety and needing to get what they need.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If you want to work with us, head to the 𝗀𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀temple.com. We offer multi-week containers. We have a trauma healing container. We have a sacred union container. That's for partners. Single sessions. Whole bunch of good stuff. Replayed courses that you can grab. So head over there. Leave us your questions. And we'll get to the next episode.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.